Good evening, Council. We'd like to call the meeting to order for October 25th, our regular Council meeting. We just concluded our organizational meeting and our swearing in. So this is our first meeting for a new term. I'm looking forward to working with everyone for the next, hopefully, all 4 years. So we are moving on to first order of business. We will take a moment of reflection before we will get into the approval of the agenda. So we'll take a moment now. All right, thank you. So approval of the agendas, we have a consent agenda. No, we don't. Yes, we do. Sorry, it's not hyperlinked. Anyone wishing to make a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councillor Monteith makes the motion. Any further questions or discussions or anything you'd like to pull from the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll approve the agenda as presented. Call to question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And a regular meeting agenda is as presented. I've received no information of any further edits. Anyone prepared to make a motion to that end? Councillor Henniger makes a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Call to question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And for the good of council, does anyone have something they'd like to share with the whole of council? Councillor Dressler.
I know it wasn't, it's a little early, but I would like to send my sincere condolences to the Fox family of the Piikani Nation. Unfortunately, over the weekend, one of the elders that's very prominent for the Piikani Nation passed away. So he was Elder Fox. So I would like to send my sincere condolences to the Fox family and the Tailfeather family that's all related to that. So copy.
Amen. All right, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Monteith.
I know we've probably said it before, but I'd just like to thank Councillor Orr for his service for the last 4 years. He had a very unique perspective on things, sometimes very wordy, but always on topic. So I just, personally really enjoyed working with him, and he was a tremendous value to the council, and we're going to miss him.
I think we'd all agree. We wish Councillor Orr the best. Former Councillor Orr. Councillor Edwards.
I just wanted to remind everybody that FCSS is doing the Pumpkins in the Park over the weekend. So if you have pumpkins that you've painted or carved and would like to donate them to display, you can drop them off at FCSS. And then also they have little treat bags that are ready for the kids for Friday afternoon. So when school lets out, if you want to take your kids in and they want to get a little Halloween treat bag, there's little treat bags there for them too. And then I believe they're also doing a community contest for decorations. So if you want to be all spooky and stuff, have at her. I've seen actually some really cool ones around town already. So you'll have to put some effort into it if you want to win, but there's lots going on. And again, FCSS, they just always come up with such fun activities to keep us all going and still, pep in our step, even though COVID kind of tries to steal it all away. So kudos to them as always.
Would they be open to a 600-pound pumpkin?
Angie O'Connor will say no to nothing. She would welcome it and find something to do with it. I guarantee it.
I did want to acknowledge admin staff, especially our interim CEO, Lisa Gillingham, for the work on the election. I know being new to the role, and I'd also like to acknowledge all the staff that participated, Miranda and Chris Holbeck as well. It's no small amount of work, especially with the Senate elections, I understand. It took a lot of extra time and energy. So just want to thank you all for the work you did in making that happen and as smooth as it did. So thank you. And Lisa has.
Thank you for the acknowledgement. Chris definitely took the lead and as the returning officer managed that election with a great amount of skill and diligence, and she was awesome to work with, and the residents themselves that participated. I just kind of wanted to touch a little bit on the Halloween note. We've had a few questions come in about whether the town is changing the day that we're going to do trick-or-treating because Halloween falls on a Sunday this year. I don't feel that this is a town decision to make. However, I do know that there is a trunk or treat happening on Saturday night at the LDS church. So people are welcome to participate in that. And there has been some posts put up around town on social media about that event. I would just encourage residents that do want to participate in trick-or-treating on Sunday night that they turn their lights on and they make their homes very visible and welcoming to those that want to do it. And if you do not want to participate, turn your lights off, and especially your outside light, and just that will just show that people can move on to the next home that's participating if they choose to. We will post something on social media kind of reflecting that opinion, but I think that's the easiest way to move forward with that date.
Yeah, I've not seen those comments. I'm not familiar why. I don't recall it ever being switched in my recollection, so.
Anytime that Halloween falls on a Sunday, and this is about, I think this is second in the last 4 or 5 years that I've been with the town, and we get the same, just a few random questions, and people think that we should know or that we should change the date, and I don't believe that falls in our role. But we can just make it really easy as residents that if people want to participate, turn your light on. If you don't, turn your light off.
And if residents want to organize that themselves, they could, right? There's nothing precluding people from saying, hey, let's do it on a different night. Okay, all right. Thanks for that. Any other for the good of council comments? Councillor Dressler?
I'd like to thank our interim CAO, Miranda, and the staff for working together with our youth organizations and accommodating them during the COVID. A lot of the youth organizations have been sparking back up as restrictions were kind of falling to the side. And so they've been very helpful in keeping them informed. So again, thank you very much for all the hard work and keeping us informed on what's going on. So.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments? If not, then we will move on to new business, of which we have Bylaw 1944, a Regional Assessment and Review Board. Interim CEO Lisa Gillingham would like to speak to this.
Thank you. There's a lot of background information attached to this, as well as some of the previous bylaw for the Regional Assessment Review Board. We talked briefly about it in the organizational meeting and the need to appoint somebody. We just need to update our bylaw to reflect that we are willing to participate in this, as well as the agreement that Old Man River Regional Services Commission to receive the Assessment Review Board services. So there is some enclosures there, again, as well as the bylaw and the previous bylaw. We are looking for council to provide all 3 readings to that bylaw tonight.
All right, is anyone prepared to make a motion for first reading of Bylaw 1944? Councillor Van Hagenbos makes the motion. Any questions on this bylaw? Any discussion, debate? Seeing none, we'll call to question the first reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Anyone prepared to make a motion for second reading of Bylaw 1944? Councillor Dressler makes that motion. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. In order to go to third reading, we need a motion from council to proceed to third reading of Bylaw 1944, of which we need a unanimous consent. Anyone prepared to make a motion to that end? Councillor Wolstenholme makes that motion. We'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion unanimously approved. Moving on to third reading. Anyone prepared to make a motion for third reading of Bylaw 1944? Councillor Dressler makes the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much for that. We will move on to donation requests. Item 2, and our interim CAO, Lisa Gillingham, would like to present this one.
Thank you. We've received a request for a donation to the senior men's AA Mustangs team for Fort Macleod. They have asked for $300 to support their program this year. The application is attached, as well as the donation policy and sponsorship policy. There is one slight caution that I would like to provide council with in providing operational funds to sporting teams, as we do have a number of sporting teams in the community. There is some concern for precedents being set here for operational funding. This isn't specific to a tournament or to a provincial championship, which we have done in the past for sports teams, so this would kind of go beyond the normal requests that we get from sports teams and a little bit more towards operating. We do have a $3,000 at the beginning of the year budget set aside for donations and sponsorships. We are sitting at $2,100 in that account as being used right now, so there is $900 remaining. So if council chooses to recognize this donation, we can sure take it out of that donation account. I think that's all that I need to say for this one. This just goes above the $200 limit that CAOs have within the policy.
Okay. All right. So we've heard the discussion, the comments from our administration. Is anyone prepared to make a motion or have any further discussion on this agenda item? So if there is no motion, this does not go anywhere. It does not need to be a defeated motion, correct? If that's council's wish. Anyone wishing to make a motion on this agenda item? And this being said, like, by no means are we not supporting the Mustangs and their hockey team as they proceed. As per our policy, it's a dangerous precedent to support the operations of one organization over another. So for that reason, I believe council has taken a position not to proceed with the donation as per this application. All right, carrying on to new business. Item 3, privatization of land titles service update. And I believe our Director of Operations, Angel Pedro, would love to speak to this one.
Good evening, Council. So as Council would remember, a few months ago, we did hear that the province was considering privatizing land titles. Pleased to present in a bulletin from RMA, sort of outlining that the province has backed down from that item there. So just asking Council to accept this as information.
Very well. Anyone prepared to make that motion to accept this information? Councillor Edwards makes that motion. It's a bit surprising that we didn't hear this information also through AUMA, or have we? I'm just wondering why we're hearing it via through RMA. Was it? Yeah, and I don't know that it was an official publication by the province at that time. I think it was just something behind the scenes that they were reviewing, correct? So this is just clarifying that they've dropped that review. Or okay, Councillor Dressler, you had a comment?
I believe we had this discussion before, if you would mind refreshing my memory, because I thought we had sent a letter in regards to this, that we were opposed.
Yeah, so this is just saying the province is not going to proceed with any changes.
Okay, just to clarify, so.
Yeah. Okay, so motion's on the floor to accept this information. If there's no further discussion, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to tax incentive application number 1. We will pass this over to our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck.
Good evening, Council. This evening on Council's inaugural agenda, first item from Finance is tax incentive applications for the 22, 23, 24 cycle. There were 3 that were brought in, reviewed, the fee was paid, the applications were found to be complete. So administration is requesting that council directs us to enter into tax incentive agreements with these 3 property owners. And I don't know the numbers for dollars because some of these assessments will be on their 22 tax assessments. But I will budget very diligently, and maybe we can talk about this more at the Finance Committee meetings. But these are the 3 that were approved from the ones that were sent in. Thank you.
Right, so these assessment increases would not be reflective in our current assessments. We're not going to see them on the assessments for the town of Fort Macleod until early next year.
So the Fort Macleod Vet Clinic's application was a year late, so theirs is actually on there, but the other 2 we won't see until the 2022 tax assessment.
Okay. Very well. Councillor Vanagbas, you had a question?
We will see the assessment though, right? It's just, we'll see it as a, if anything, as a liability when it comes to budget time or anything. Like the value's there as part of our total non-res assessment.
So the reason that I need to see the assessment is so I can estimate how much tax will be forgiven this year. So that's just always my concern is the dollars and that the budget balances at the end of the year. But the assessor does have to have our assessment in and uploaded to the province by the end of February. So I'll have ample time to talk to the Finance Committee and make sure that our budget is in line.
Very good. Very well. Anyone prepared to make a motion based on the recommendation?
So moved.
Moved as per the recommendation. Any
Yes.
further discussion? Any questions, debates? Seeing none, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
On that item, I was curious, do you know of anyone that, maybe it's not a fair question, that didn't apply, that we may get it next year?
So we go through all the development permits. And when we know that there is a vacant parcel that is being developed for non-residential use, we send out a letter and we send out an application immediately. So at the end of the year, as it comes closer to the deadline for applications for the next cycle of grant or incentive applications, we go through all that again. And the development officer and I sit down and we say, okay, who's eligible, haven't we gotten any paperwork from? So yeah, there's a couple that I haven't seen. So that's something that council and the Finance Committee and the Infrastructure Committee may have to discuss at one of these meetings is how long does it stay open? So we're finding, now that I'm kind of helping, the CAO was in charge of this process before, and without a CAO, it was given to me to head up. And I'm finding there's some practical issues that you guys will see in the next agenda item too with the way that the bylaw is written and how it's being administered. So, but we're doing our best.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. So that's a discussion that I'm sure we'll have some more on, okay? All right, that motion was carried, so we'll move on to item 5, tax incentive application, topic number 2, Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck.
Good evening again, Council. This is the second one on the agenda, and this is the flip side of the tax incentive applications that we are approving tonight. This one is going to have to be declined. or denied. And the reason is that the cost of the expansion improvement for the property was a certain dollar amounts, and the assessed value, the proposed assessed value according to the assessor, that type of an improvement would add quite a bit less in assessed value than what it cost the property owner for construction. So the assessed value increase is well below the $50,000 that is in our bylaw. So this one has to be denied, and I've asked council if it would be okay if we sent back the application fee too, because it was just out of the blue. I wasn't expecting that at all.
Okay. Anyone prepared to make a motion to that end? Councillor Edwards makes a motion. As per the recommendation,
Yes, as per the recommendation, and to refund the application fee.
I had a question then. If we are revisiting the bylaw, that could be written into the bylaw then, correct? That an application fee is returned if,
Well, application fees sometimes are non-refundable because there's some work that administration has to do, but this one was just like blatantly, like just didn't work, and I felt bad. I just felt,
I'm thinking there may be more of those situations just because the assumption is made that the assessment value is going to go up at least what they've invested into the renos. And so they make the application and then come back and find out that's not the case. So I think it might merit some edits to the bylaw so we don't have to do this every time if it comes up.
and the bylaw will be reviewed in July. This July 2022, and we can have preliminary discussions at finance committee meetings, just trying to get a handle on what's working and what's not within the bylaw.
Sounds good. Any other discussion? Councillor Monteith?
More on a theoretical basis. What happens if it comes out that the assessed value did go up $50,000? Does their application then get re-examined?
So if the assessor is incorrect in his estimation of what their assessment is gonna go up by, yeah, we would get them to reapply.
Or they appeal the assessment too?
I rarely see people appealing their assessments to get higher assessments for taxes, but you never know.
Very good. Good discussion. Any other comments, questions? Motion is on the floor, so if there's no further discussion or debate, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6 is our 2021 municipal election results. They are before us. Council received this report as information, as recommendation. Anyone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Wolstenholme makes the motion. Any debate on these election results? Kidding.
I don't want to debate the election results. However, I am a little bit sad on the percentage of voter turnout.
Correct.
29% isn't very good. I mean, it speaks, like, it's kind of a double-edged sword because people didn't really feel threatened, or I don't know if that's quite the right word, or spurred to action that they needed to go vote, but I wish people were a little more involved. I don't know.
I think we probably all would have expected a pretty low turnout based on candidates running. So it's interesting to see some of the other feedback on the 2 referendum questions. Seen some comments on Facebook, like, did you guys actually check into what you're voting for? And it's like, oh, we'll see how it goes, right? So, yeah, so thanks for this information. Any other discussion, debates? I imagine before next election, it was advertised well in advance the election, the nomination, so that I think was done reasonably well as well. Okay, all right. Motion to accept this information, call to question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. On to Fortis franchise fee. And our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck, would like to speak to this.
Good evening again, Council. It's our annual review of the franchise fee for our electrical distribution system. I think I've put all the background in there. I know Councillor Orr, former Councillor Orr, would have liked to have had a conversation about renters versus homeowners, and that segment of the population maybe should be getting a little bit, maybe there should be an increase and we get more renters, more money from renters than landowners. I didn't go down that path. It's difficult for us because we don't administer the utility to know renters, and I couldn't do any data collection that would have been any great help for this conversation. I may in the future try a little bit harder to get some information on who's got renters, but I don't know if they're triple net charging for rent. I don't know if they're getting back their utilities. So we're just going on the basis that 15% seems reasonable for us. It's been like that since we started with Fortis for our franchise fee. And I am proposing that we don't increase it for 2022 and we stay with the 15%, which is still 5% below the cap of 20%.
Anyone prepared to make a motion on this? As per the recommendation or such, Councillor Dressler makes a motion.
As per the recommendation, Your Worship.
So overall, I think we're definitely not on the highest side, but we're not on the low side or either. So I think it's reasonable to say it's set at a fairly high level already. I don't know that it needs to be increased, and the total revenue that comes from this franchise fee based on the 13,500 and 0.5% would mean that roughly the revenue is 400,000 a year on the Fortis franchise fee. Okay, very good. Councillor Monteith.
I think when we're looking at percentages and looking at this, people need to understand that this is one methodology of raising revenue. It's no different than property taxes. It's no different than profit in the water system or garbage collection or whatever else. It all goes into the pot to fund the town of Fort Macleod. So you have to look at this in totality, not into one particular number. So if we're a little higher here, it means we're a little lower in property taxes because we don't have to charge as much property taxes. So what the mix we have right now seems to be working. So, I don't see any reason to change it. So I don't think we need to look at where we are with other towns, because when we look at that for property taxes and whatever, we see where we're sitting. So it all works together. So I don't think I'd get too hung up on the percentage.
Very well. Any other comments? Councillor Van Agbos?
With the projected 22 revenue, it's 6.1% more. That's obviously based on a gross revenue paid to Fortis from all our res and non-res electrical utility, correct?
Yeah, under financial implications at the bottom, our 22 estimated delivery tariff revenue that we would get from customers that goes to Fortis is that 2.698 million.
So we're, as a town, we're paying our rates. Either we've experienced 6.1% of electrical growth, or the Fortis is charging us 6.1% more as a town. Either or. It wasn't a question, it was more of a comment.
So your 6.1% is coming from where, sorry?
Well, the increase of 6.1% is based on the 15%, which is the tariff revenue. Now, obviously, the tariff revenue has gone up because our 15% is generated, well, because our revenue is generated as 15% of that. So my question, if I were to have a question, is that how is our tariff revenue increasing? Is it due to an increase in cost of the electrical utility, or an increase in our electrical grid?
A combination of both, yeah. Everybody knows commodity rates are going up and we are also growing, so it is a combination. Can't tell you which is which, but it is.
Very good, thank you. All right, any other discussion? Motion has been made. If there's no further discussion, we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, that brings us to the last agenda item of the night, which is an in-camera discussion for personnel and legal. Can I get a motion from council for an in-camera? Councilor Edwards makes the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.